In this harsh, rugged, vast landscape, a revolutionary ideal, the belief in one God, was born. Judaism was the first monotheistic religion, followed by Christianity and then Islam. God commanded Abraham to leave his father's home and journey to a land he would show him, where he would forge a mighty nation and revolutionize history by introducing monotheism, the belief in one God. In Hebrew, Abraham means father of all nations. My name, Avi, is actually short for Abraham. I am named after my grandfather. Abraham left his home and journeyed to the land of Canaan, which spans from modern-day Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea, today's Israel. This was the beginning of his quest to reach the land God promised his descendants. Abraham's revolutionary message of monotheism spread to nomadic tribes called the Hebrews, meaning those who pass by. From these tribes emerged the first monotheistic religion, Judaism. The Hebrews' adoption of monotheism led to the establishment of two independent Jewish kingdoms, the Kingdom of Judea and the Kingdom of Israel. These kingdoms existed over 3,000 years ago in the area now known as Israel and the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria. In 70 AD, the Roman Empire crushed the first Jewish revolt, an uprising against Roman rule driven by growing tensions over political, religious, and economic oppression. Following the Jewish rebellion, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem and exiled much of the Jewish population. This marked the end of independent Jewish sovereignty in the region. The Romans then renamed Judea Palestina to erase the Jewish identity of the region. Originally used by the Greeks, Palestina is a name that comes from Philistia, which originally referred to the Philistines, an ancient tribe believed to have come from areas like Crete or present-day Cyprus, who settled on the southwestern coast of the Mediterranean. Judaism was the foundation of the world's second major monotheistic religion, Christianity. The third monotheistic religion, Islam, emerged in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century. Islam spread rapidly across the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia, largely through military conquests, forming a vast empire also known as the Caliphate. A caliphate is an Islamic administrative, political, and religious entity governed by Sharia law, led by a caliph, a term meaning the successor of the Prophet Muhammad, Allah's messenger. As the empire expanded, many of the conquered populations converted to Islam. For over 1,000 years, from the 7th century until the early 20th century, much of the Middle East was governed by the Caliphate. Arab dynasties ruled the Caliphate from 650 to 1250. The Turkish Ottoman Empire governed the Caliphate from 1517 until 1920. After the collapse of the Ottoman Empire following World War I, the Turkish state officially abolished the Caliphate in 1924. During the 600 years of Ottoman rule, Palestine was a neglected territory with small, poor Arab and Jewish communities. At the time, Palestine held no political significance. It was simply another region governed by the Ottoman Empire. My great-grandfather, Samuel Melamed, who lived in Jerusalem's Old City in the 1800s, considered himself a Palestinian Jew. The term Palestinian then referred to a geographical identity, not a political one. 19th century European nationalism also inspired Zionism. Zionism is the desire of the Jewish people to return to their ancient homeland between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea and re-establish Jewish sovereignty there. In May 1916, During World War I, Great Britain and France, confident of their eventual victory, signed a secret agreement known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. This deal divided control of territories that were then under Ottoman rule, including the region of Palestine. The 1917 Balfour Declaration and Great Britain's formal commitment to establishing a homeland for Jews in this piece of land known as Palestine/the Land of Israel fueled an intensifying Jewish-Arab conflict on the ground. In April 1920, the San Remo Conference brought together the victors of World War I to determine the future of the Middle East after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. At this conference, they ratified the Sykes-Picot Agreement, dividing control of the region between Great Britain and France. In July 1922, the League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations, officially granted Great Britain a mandate to govern the territory of Palestine, marking the start of British control over Palestine/the Land of Israel. During the time of the British Mandate, the conflict between Jews and Arabs in Palestine/Land of Israel intensified and escalated. In November 1947, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, also known as the Partition Resolution, to establish a Jewish state and an Arab state in the area known then as Palestine/the Land of Israel. The Zionist movement accepted this resolution, but the Arab and Palestinian leadership rejected it. On May 14, 1948, Great Britain formally returned the mandate to the United Nations. The very same day, in Tel Aviv, the Zionist leadership declared the creation of the State of Israel within the boundaries outlined in the Partition Resolution. Refusing to recognize Israel, the next day, 7 Arab countries and Palestinian militias launched a war against the newly born state. In Israeli Zionist terminology, the war is called the War of Independence. In Arab terminology, it is called the Nakba, a word that means being afflicted with a serious disease. During the war, Jordan took control of the west bank of the Jordan River and later annexed it, making it part of Jordan. The ceasefire line between the West Bank and the State of Israel was called the Green Line. During the war, Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip but did not annex Gaza to Egypt. Between December 1947 and the end of 1949, an estimated 600,000 to 700,000 Arabs fled the areas affected by the fighting. These people would later become known as Palestinian refugees. Following the war, in December 1948, the United Nations General Assembly issued Resolution 194. 6 Arab states voted against the resolution. As the conflict escalated, attacks on Jewish communities in Arab countries intensified, beginning even before the creation of Israel and worsening afterwards. It is estimated that around 850,000 Jews fled from Arab countries seeking refuge in Israel. From 1948 to 1973, the Arab world took the lead in the conflict with Israel. During this time, Arab states launched 3 major wars against Israel. The 1948 and 1967 wars had a clear objective: eliminate Israel. The 1967 war is also known as the Six-Day War. Following the 1967 war, the world woke up to a new reality.
כאן קודקוד 89, האם מוטה מדבר? עבור.
Israel captured several key territories: the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula, which were controlled by Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which were under Jordanian control, and the Golan Heights, which was held by Syria. As a result of these military victories, Israel took control of these areas, though it did not formally annex most of them. However, Israel extended its jurisdiction to East Jerusalem shortly after the war, and in 1981 to the Golan Heights. In the years that followed, Israeli governments established communities known as settlements in some of the territories captured during the war. After the 1967 war, the two parts of Jerusalem were now both under Israeli sovereignty, and this included the old city of Jerusalem. For Jews in Israel and around the world, this was a euphoric culmination of a 2,000 years old dream. In the Arab terminology, the 1967 war is called Naksa, meaning a repeating severe illness. Following the 1967 war, the United Nations Security Council issued Resolution 242. On October 6, 1973, Egypt and Syria launched their third war against Israel. Their goal was to regain territories lost to Israel in 1967. Egypt wanted to reclaim the Sinai Peninsula. Syria aimed to recapture the Golan Heights. In Israeli terminology, this war, launched on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, is called the Yom Kippur War or the 1973 war. In Arab terminology, the war is referred to as the October War, Harb October, or the Ramadan War, Harb Ramadan. Realizing they could not eliminate Israel, Egypt and Jordan shifted to diplomacy. Egypt made peace with Israel in 1979. Jordan gradually distanced itself, renouncing its claim to the West Bank in 1988 and signing a peace treaty with Israel in 1994. At the October 1974 Rabat Conference in Morocco, the Arab League formally recognized the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. Established in 1964, the PLO's agenda was to eliminate Israel through armed struggle. The shift of responsibility from regional Arab powers to local Arab and Palestinian leaders, particularly the PLO, transformed a regional Arab-Israeli conflict into a more direct and violent Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the ground. A milestone in the escalation was the first Palestinian Intifada. Between 1987 and 1993, a generation of young Palestinians led a violent uprising against the Israeli government known as the Intifada. During these years, violence and bloodshed were a part of everyday life in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. The severe violence during the years of the Intifada motivated Israelis and Palestinians to turn to the path of negotiations and seek a solution and compromise. In 1993, Israel and the PLO signed the Oslo Accords, an agreement that outlined a roadmap for a diplomatic process aimed at achieving a peaceful solution to the conflict based on the concept of two-state solution. As part of the agreement, the Palestinian National Authority was established. Today, the Palestinian Authority controls 50% of the West Bank and governs about 90% of the Palestinians in the West Bank. It seems as if the conflict was on a positive track towards a peaceful solution. But the optimism of Oslo and the hopes of a new path to peace and reconciliation crashed on the rocks of reality. Since the mid-1990s, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has severely escalated, claiming the lives of tens of thousands of Israelis and Palestinians. Palestinians blame the Israeli occupation and the expansion of Israeli settlements. Israelis blame the Palestinian violence and the Palestinians' unwillingness to compromise. These conflicting narratives have dominated Western discourse. However, as violence has escalated to unprecedented levels, the prospect of a diplomatic solution has faded. Both Israelis and Palestinians are not in a place where they can move toward peace, despite the West's persistent push for a two-state solution. In 2005, Israel ended its military presence in Gaza, dismantled all settlements, and handed control to the Palestinian Authority. In the summer of 2007, Hamas, a Palestinian Islamist militant and political organization, seized control of Gaza and violently ousted the Palestinian Authority. From that moment until today, Gaza became a launching pad for increasingly frequent attacks on Israel. The escalation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been largely fueled by the strategic alliance between two radical factors, the Islamic Republic of Iran and Hamas. This marriage of convenience allows Hamas and Iran to advance their own ideological and political agendas, all while deepening the conflict. Since the 1990s, the radical alliance between Iran and Hamas has been the driving force behind the escalating violence in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.